Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Sagar, what are we doing today?
Oh, we have a great show for you today. We have the Hill's editor-in-chief, Bob Cusack, the head of the Iowa GOP, Jeff Kaufman, responding to some controversial comments made by Steve King, and, of course, Team Rising breaking down some of the new polls. All that coming up today on Rising. Krystal, what are you taking a look at?
Well, we got some totally normal and fine reporting on the Biden campaign from our colleague Amy Parnes here at The Hill. The headline is, Biden allies float scaling back events to limit gaffes. And here's the key paragraph in my view. Biden has a tendency to make blunders late in the day, his allies say, particularly after a long swing on the road like he had last week in Iowa. They say something needs to be done to give the candidate more downtime as the campaign intensifies in the fall. More downtime. Well, this is perfect since everyone knows that Trump is going to take it easy on whoever the Dem nominee is, and if Biden were to get to the Oval Office, it's not like anything important happens that a president has to deal with after like 5 p.m., right? You remember that famous Hillary Clinton 3 a.m. call? Well, if we could just shift that to like after nap time but before supper, then I think we're all good here, right? Guys, this is a major problem. Biden already has the lightest schedule of any candidate by far, something that Parnes also points out in this piece. Just compared to the other septuagenarian in the race, Biden has been to Iowa half as many times. Maybe it's because when he does go to Iowa, things like this happen.
We have this notion that somehow if you're poor, you cannot do it. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids. Wealthy kids, black kids, Asian kids. No, I really mean it, but think how we think about it.
What one analyst called his old man schedule has been in place from the start. In the first 6 weeks of Biden's campaign, he held a mere 10 events. Over that same period, for comparison, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, both of whom, by the way, have other jobs too, held 25 events and 23 events, respectively. Biden's grueling pace of about 1.5 events per week is what some allies apparently feel he may need to scale back on. Now, let me be serious here for a moment. The stakes in this election could not be higher. We're witnessing today a climate crisis that in the near term threatens water supplies and is already contributing to massive refugee movement. We have escalating domestic extremist violence, the worst addiction crisis in our history. We may be plummeting towards a recession. China's asserting themselves as a true global adversary and potential existential threat. Automation stands to eliminate half our jobs. Money and corruption have basically destroyed any semblance of a real democracy. Inequality has stripped our rural communities and small cities of hope and denied working class citizens basic dignity. In other words, we've got some real shit to deal with that would be nearly an impossible task even for someone who is fully able and has an actual vision for change. If there's something going on here where the vice president is not up to the task, we need to know that today. At the very least, we deserve to see whether he can handle a fully loaded campaign schedule just like his competitors. We are in the fight of our generation. There is no room for blunders, and there's no time for more downtime. So either get in there and fight or get the heck out of the way. I mean, Sagar, the more that we see out of Joe Biden, the more questions are raised.
Yeah, I mean, when you are this old, the onus is upon you to prove that you are up to it. What did Trump do throughout the entire 2016 campaign? The guy did put more miles on his campaign plane and did more events than all of his other rivals. He drew bigger crowds. What is Bernie Sanders doing? I mean, all you have to do is go on Twitter and you'll see him running through airports, taking selfies. Same thing with Elizabeth Warren. He goes from event to event to event, does his bus stop things. Joe Biden does these lackluster, small-time events which aren't even getting crowds as big as Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders, and purely exists off of earned media from the national media. That's it. That's his entire campaign. And that's too much for him? This is a big problem.
Well, and here's the other issue. The crux of his support, as we know, is people believe he's the most electable.
Exactly.
How can you look at this inability to have even half of the schedule of a normal presidential contender and say this guy's the most electable.
Yeah.
He's not. I mean, that's the bottom line. He's not.
I mean, I watched Trump in the midterm elections hold 3 rallies a night whenever it came up to the wire. He spent every single day on that plane, 2 rallies a day, 3 rallies a day, tweet after tweet, media after media, press availability, press conference. He will suck the oxygen out of the room. Joe Biden currently can't even do that. How is he going to do that against Donald Trump? It's just so funny to watch the conventional wisdom on that, oh, Joe Biden is the one who could beat Trump. No, I mean, maybe in Joe Biden from 1992, who still had some swagger, but even then, when you start looking at his record, there's a lot of big problems there.
How he performed in his past presidential races.
In his past presidential races, I mean, the guy just has no juice, and I think that it's increasingly clear throughout this campaign.
Well, and there was a lot less to work with Hillary Clinton on the health piece and on the fitness piece, and they seized on that and capitalized on it, and the Trump team is all over this every single day. It's a problem.
Absolutely.
Next on Rising, President Trump hosts a rally in New Hampshire and tells the crowd they have no choice but to vote for him.
And Pelosi and the Democrats want to make Moscow Mitch a thing. The Hill's editor-in-chief Bob Cusack will tell us how successful that's been so far and more when Rising returns.